In addition to the changes made in the previous video, we also want to make sure that we can differentiate easily between the clusters we've made. If we zoom out a bit and we look at these clusters that we have stored inside our null nodes, what we can do is we can put down a switch node and we can select all of these and wire them straight into the switch. And now instead of clicking one by one, we can simply roll up that select input number to pick the block that we want. Let's just set it to 0. Let's also drop down a null node, visualize that and call it out cluster. And because it's an out node, I'm going to color it green. So this is easier for us to call once we start building the simulation. And later on, when we start automating the system, we're going to change it again. But for now, this will do just fine. So that's our building clusters. Let's move up back to object level and jump into our city blocks node. That's the first one we did. Jump inside. Let's make a few changes here as well. So let's drop down a blast node. Let's zoom in a bit. I'm going to pull down this out node and I'm going to drop down a blast. What this allows us to do, if we select it, delete non-selected, if we say 0, all it shows us is block 0. If we then use our middle mouse wheel and scroll up in the group parameter, we can see that we have different blocks all the way up to 69, as we have 70 blocks starting at 0. Let's leave it at 0. What this means is that once we fetch this out-centered blocks into our city block sim, that we have only one of them, and then as we cycle through them, we can do them block by block, these simulations that we're going to be building. The same goes for the building clusters. With our switch node that we've just laid down, we can pick one of them, and that way we can make sure that we have one city block and one city cluster. So let's jump back inside our building clusters. I'm just going to visualize that out node, which in my case already is. Now, this is not what we want, right? So now we've made the changes in our DOP network. Let's visualize the DOPNet correctly, and now we can see that we only have buildings set on 0, and if we simulate it, they should not stack on top of each other. Let's make sure that happens with the houses as well. So let's find our switch node, set that to 0, click our DOPNet, reset simulation, and because I've still got frame 149 selected, it's going to automatically cook to that point. So now we can see that when they're contracting, I have nothing set on top of anything else. Whereas with my old city blocks, I do. What this means is that you're going to have to resimulate your city blocks. So 3 for the house clusters and 3 for the commercial clusters. What you can do is look at our previous videos and have a look at again how we used to simulate these blocks. But I'll give you a really quick overview. So you want to select the correct switch node, in our case 0. Then the outbuildings should look something like this, and if you switch into the commercial buildings, you'll simply have bigger buildings right there. You can then reset the simulation. It's cooking to frame 149 for myself. I'm going to visualize the DOP import and simulate all the way to 600. So that's done. You can then visualize your old node. Simply control-click the red lock, unlock it. That means you lose your data, but when you pipe the DOP import back into the null node, you should have a correct block in there. Just lock it again, and do the same for the following 2 null nodes. Once you've got your houses redone, go back to the switch node, set the input to 1. That means we have the commercial buildings there. Let's visualize the outbuildings node to see if that's all correct, which it looks like it is. Don't forget to change the seed on your copy node to make sure that you get a different distribution of buildings, so in our case commercial variety. Let me expand that for you. So $PT times 26, let's set that to 13, apply and accept. So now my seed is different. I'm just going to make sure my simulation is reset again. Visualize the DOP import node and run it. Again all the way to 600. So now I have another commercial cluster, no buildings on top of other buildings. I can unlock this one, control click the lock, unlock it, gone. Now we can pipe the DOP import back into that null node, unlock it again. Now if we unlock that DOP import node, we should still have our houses cluster, and we should still have our commercial buildings cluster. Just make sure you also replace the other 2 house clusters and the other 2 commercial clusters. And once that's done, you can join me in the next clip.